On Mondays, I typically do a segment that I call Overreactions versus Reality. And this is sort of Jeff Ward reality based on how people overreact, particularly in my business, to stuff that happens over the weekend. And a lot of stuff happened over the weekend, so it is set up perfectly for overreactions versus reality. So here we go. Overreaction. Texas A&M had to whack their head coach, Jimbo Fisher, and they had to whack him at this time. You do know he's been fired. They had to do it and had to do it at this time. Reality. Not really. Not really. Now, two words come to mind, and I want to get them out there right away and let them sit there, see if you can relate to them, see if you agree with them. Two words come to mind. They came to my mind immediately. And to be honest, I've had these two words stuck for quite some time. Those two words are inevitable and gross. I can't get away from those two. Inevitable and gross. What else? I disagree with that? Really? I'll explain both. The timing is confusing. The firing is understandable, thus inevitable, but the timing is confusing. This thing, as I've said many, many times, it's been an arranged marriage that hasn't worked. There are two ways to look at his firing, two big ways to look at his firing. One, of course, did he deserve it? And the answer clearly is absolutely. That's really not debatable. None of this was debatable. That's why I said the word inevitable it just sticks out there. It was inevitable, right? There was no reason for him to keep his job. He had not done anything that would make anyone argue that he should have kept his job. The only issue was the payout so giant and the timing so bad that he'd just be hanging on a little bit longer. That was the only issue. It was inevitable. So did he deserve it? Of course he deserved it. There is no and has been no worse return on the investment as a coach, money put in versus return. There's not been a worse return on investment as a coach than the $117 million, I'm being generous there, $117 million Jimbo Fisher. Okay, it's been a terrible return, obviously. The guy makes about, $8 million per win. The only person, and yeah, I do think somebody is kind of in that orbit, but the only person that even comes close to the underachieving level of Jimbo Fisher in the coaching business is Lincoln Riley at USC. But he's only in, year 2 of his underachievement? So nothing really can compare to the miserable job that Jimbo Fisher had done at A&M. I said the other day that I would love to compare Jimbo Fisher to Bernie Madoff or Sam Brinkman-Fried or Bankman-Fried, whatever his name is, with the big fro, the crypto guy. I mean, I'd love to. It'd be nice to blame him for everything. It would be nice to say that Jimbo Fisher ripped off Texas A&M, but this deal is on A&M. It is. And it's been awful. Inevitable and gross. Not yet to the gross part. So, and don't do the Aggie thing, okay? Don't do that. I get it a lot. Do the Aggie thing and say, well, Jeff, you're only saying these things because you went to Texas. Listen, my alma mater has thrown money at bad decisions countless times. Countless times. Never to this level. Nobody in the history of the bloated, out-of-control sport that is professional college football, nobody has ever thrown money at it like this. But yes, I would be incredibly critical, and most normal thinking people would be as well, if it was Texas that had done this. This had to end sooner or later. It did. Everybody knew it. Everybody was watching it. His reactions were fairly typical. The guy had produced 0 results. There was nothing good to show for it. There are no trophies. There's not even close to a trophy. It's awful. Why this? Why now? That's interesting. So there is no blame in A&M wanting to get out of this arranged marriage. No blame whatsoever. The only question is really, when were you going to do this? The inevitable part was plainly obvious. We are all just waiting around. It was almost a drinking game when this was going to happen. So no fault at all. It's been terrible. It hasn't worked. The comment was made over the weekend that they were stuck in neutral. They were stuck in quicksand. It wasn't working. Now, point number 2, right? I mean, we knew it was coming. The firing is completely justified. He deserved to lose his job 2 weeks ago, this past weekend, 5 weeks from now, whenever. Did they have to do it now? Why this, why now is kind of a fascinating part of this. When is the right time, of course, is going to be the question. I don't know. They just won. I mean, they won over the weekend. They won an SEC game, which is not something the guy does very often. But they still fired him. Why now? I assume you do it now so you can make a deal with someone you've already been talking to. Or, number 2, obviously, is start the process before you lose to Texas next year. The one thing that, and I don't know, and the one thing I've always thought is that Texas joining the SEC and them throwing all this money at Jimbo Fisher only to turn around and lose to Texas joining the SEC would have been too much. I had this vision of that he would get fired walking off the field after a loss to Texas. So I'm not saying it completely hung over their head and was forcing them to fast track this, but the idea of getting to that point with this guy and this money and this underachievement, that would be too much to take. Whack him long before that time seemed to be the idea. They just had it, and it's understandable. So you probably want to do the deal now so you can start talking to somebody so you can try to make it right. I think the success Texas has had has been haunting this deal since day one. I mean, everything should be haunting this deal. I mean, it's the dumbest deal in sports. It has been for a while. So it wasn't just the Texas doing well, the idea of Texas making a Final Four, they won't. But the idea of Texas making a Final Four, it's had to be this dark cloud over this whole thing. It just had to remind A&M all the time what a screwed up relationship this was. So I don't know what is the right exact answer as to why now, but they better get it right. This might be, and the numbers floating around are the gross part. It's gross. That part of this is gross. The numbers floating around will be, this could be a $200 million set of coaching moves. Nobody really knows at this point, but it could be not just 100 and something million for this guy to go away, approximately 117 to go away. The whole transaction could take close to $200 million. Can I point out something that seems pretty apparent? And maybe, I know there's no turning back, and that's the gross part of this, but can I point out something that seems really, really obvious right now? Somebody said over the weekend that Jimbo Fisher had checked out some time ago, and it made me think about something that seems pretty consistent, and that's this. Name one huge payout to a college coach, not named Nick Saban, that worked, is working. Name it. There's been 3 giant deals in the last few years, started by Jimbo Fisher's deal, but the giant payouts, the giant paydays for these coaches have gone sort of like this. Jimbo Fisher, out. Mel Tucker at Michigan State got a $92 million deal, and then he flamed out in a spectacular, terrible way. So he gets fired. And then most recently, you have the Lincoln Riley deal. Again, all this on the heels of the Jimbo Fisher deal. How's that working out? I mean, the trend seems to be when you get the giant payday, you get lazy. It doesn't seem to work. None of the guys not named Saban of the most recent giant paydays have even come close to expectations. 2 of the 3 are done already. You sure this works out? You sure? $100 million guaranteed, which is pretty much what all these guys have received. Not named Saban. $100 million guaranteed. Look what happens. I mean, it's almost at some level sort of understandable that they get fat and happy. It's understandable they get stale. You know, these guys that have been grinding and had success all of a sudden get these giant paydays, and take a look at the programs not involving Nick Saban. Now, the disgusting part, the gross part. It's gross. Part of this that's gross, no, the big part of this that's gross is this is the new normal. It's the new normal. Jimbo Fisher's firing at Texas A&M, the largest payoff, cannot go without the acknowledgement and the embarrassment. Texas A&M has to be embarrassed. I'm embarrassed for them. There was no good time to do this. It wasn't going to be embarrassing. Whenever it was going to happen, had to be embarrassing. You are the owners of the biggest mistake in the industry, and you are also the creators of the new normal in terms of these gross salaries that don't work. I'm embarrassed for A&M, embarrassed for all the people that work hard to teach and learn in the name of busting their ass to make a difference in their industry and their science. These are people walking around a college campus, and I know everyone forgets that in the branding of these college programs, they pretend that they're on a college campus. Think about the people on the campus. There are people that are going to develop software. There are people that are going to create, I don't know, at A&M, they're going to create some sort of environmental friendly way to find oil. They're going to save my dog, save your dog. It'll make a difference in the world. These are people that'll make a difference in the world. It'll stick for a long time. Football players and coaches do not. Do not. Yeah, but it's entertainment, Jeff. Okay. Well, this is a gross way to operate the entertainment business. This obscene spending is the new normal. A&M has to own it. Both ways. Both parts of the obscene spending. Getting fired and paid is the new normal. And what's bizarre and gross is that these schools aren't only football programs. I know there's a logo on there, and everybody and the players themselves are disconnected from the school, and there's nothing related to the school. There are going to be plenty of assistant professors and teaching assistants who don't make in a month what Jimbo Fisher makes per minute of getting fired. College programs pretend to be part of the college when it's convenient. You hear it. You hear student athletes. Oh, my guys graduate. All this blah, blah, blah. When it's convenient, they love to pretend to be a part of the college. And then when it's convenient, they pretend to be a professional football franchise. There's no turning back. Jimbo Fisher did a lousy job. Texas A&M is... Coaching at A&M is really not that hard. It's really not. I think the money makes it easier, but it's not that rough of a gig. A&M had every right to be fed up with a guy. No argument at all. But it needs to be said one last time. The money wasn't Jimbo Fisher's fault. The money was not his fault. Taking the money to leave is not his fault. That's on A&M, and that's embarrassing. Overreaction. The Texas A&M job is a dumpster fire post Jimbo Fisher. I feel like that's the assumption. You know what? When a coach gets fired, the assumption is, oh, what a mess. But the overreaction that Jimbo Fisher's turned it into a dumpster fire, I don't think it's in reality at all. The reality is it's not even close. That statement is not even close. It's similar, I think, very similar to what Steve Sarkisian took over at Texas. All the resources you want. Again, I think that's a problem. I think the money is a problem. The money is not producing harder work and greater payoffs. The money, the giant money, is producing obviously some form of laziness. Something's not working for the money being paid. But the job at A&M right now, post Jimbo Fisher, I think is a lot like what Steve Sarkisian took over. There's all the resources you want, obviously. A good roster. Not a great roster, but it's a good roster at A&M right now. It's a fairly talented team at A&M. They're not awful. This is just underachieving top to bottom. This is not an example of there's nothing there. That's not true at all. Somebody can win at A&M with that roster. I don't know if they will if you throw $100 million at them. I think the return on that is pretty well proven. But somebody can win with that A&M roster right now. I'm not saying you win a championship in the SEC, but you should get a better product with the current roster than what you got with Jimbo Fisher. No doubt about it. There's very little pressure at A&M. Don't ever let a coach get away with that. That's BS. It's really not that tough. Tough is coaching in the NFL. Tough is coaching NFL in major markets. There's not that much pressure at A&M. Really not. The bar is low. It's a friendly job. Even more friendly than Texas. The expectations are really low. A&M is basically in a rebound relationship after a toxic partner. So all they have to do, whoever this is win some, win more. Be a pleasant face, and they'll love you. And that bar is really low. Who's it going to be? I don't know. I assume near the top of the list is Dan Campbell, who's the head coach of the Detroit Lions, which is pretty interesting on its face. And there's arguments about that. He might be the head coach of the number one seed in the NFC this year. He'll either be the 1 or 2 seed. So it's going to be a while. I do think college programs that want to win, that want to be able to produce talent, that want to sell themselves, I think you do have to go get NFL guys. I do. I think that's a problem now, but I do think if you had your first pick, you always want an NFL guy. And the reason is this. That's what players want. That's what college players want. And Dan Campbell would be perfect. I have no idea how A&M could make it happen. They'd have to outspend the Ford family, which apparently they might be willing to do. Again, this could be a $200 million turnaround. Pay a guy out, pay a guy in. Could be $200 million. I mean, it would be ideal. An NFL guy would be ideal because that is recruits don't care about what you did in the 40s and 70s and 80s. What they care about is how many of us can get in the NFL. And so that's what you want to do first. So you want an NFL guy. NFL coaches are better coaches. They're just better at it. The risk is the risk. And the risk in swinging at an NFL guy is the college game, the college landscape is incredibly different. And someone like Dan Campbell or some NFL person would have to ask themselves some serious questions about what kind of work environment they're getting in. You're not coaching football anymore. In the NFL, you coach football. The NFL is about players, and it's nothing but football. That's it. College is completely different. It is about kissing up to recruits and kissing up, maybe more than ever at A&M, up to rich men. That's what you do. That's it. It's nauseating, and it's nothing like the NFL, where all you do every day is just do football. Little about being a head coach, the next head coach at A&M, little about that job is going to be about football. That's even more true now, I think. We could argue that, but I think that's even more true now. Recruiting is about finding someone to give them money. It's kissing up to 17-year-olds that get cash and don't deserve it. The NFL is just about players just showing up to work and keeping your job or losing your job. The college head coaching job is about sales. It's about closing, and it's about making your shareholders happy. And you better make those guys who paid off Jimbo Fisher happier than ever. That's what college is about. And I don't know how appealing that's going to be to an NFL guy. It'd be tough. It'd be great to think, I mean, you're going to take care of me. There's very little pressure. I'm set for life. My grandkids are set for life, obviously. But You're getting out of the football business and getting into the sales and the sales closing business. It's different. Overreaction. The Cincinnati Bengals are the hottest team in the NFL with the hottest quarterback in the NFL. Reality. That was true until they played the Houston Texans. Whoa. If anyone says they had the Texans beating the red-hot Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati, they're lying. That is a lie. No one said that. No way. So, wow. And it wasn't a fluke. Yeah, the Texans beat the red-hot Bengals with the future Hall of Famer at quarterback, and it was not a fluke at all. The Texans had almost 550 yards. C.J. Stroud had 356. He now has 15 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. In consecutive weeks, you know what he's done? He's had 470 and 360. And if Texans head coach DeMeco Ryans needed a signature win to get Coach of the Year, he just got it. Yeah. I mean, nobody saw that. No way. No one was playing better than the Bengals. No one was playing better than Joe Burrow, well, except for C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud already had Rookie of the Year. He probably had that the second week of the season. You know, there's more talk now about him being the MVP, which is a decent debate. But if he didn't have it already sewn up, he does now, and it will be unanimous. And I don't know how anyone in their right mind does not make him Rookie of the Year unanimously. You give him a couple trophies. This is... And none of us can even remember anything to compare it to. We're in new territory here in talking about the Texans, but this is the best Texans win at least in a decade. And I don't even know where to start in the other one. Nobody else does either. A good case can be made that this is a franchise-making win. I don't think that's putting too much on this. This is completely new territory for that franchise. Look, this is the franchise that nobody ever talks about. 3 weeks ago, I did a segment calling them the most nondescript franchise in all of sports. Guess what's happened the last 24 hours? The franchise that nobody talks about, now everyone's talking about. The franchise that screws everything up, and they have screwed everything up, has obviously got it right. And they got it right in the most important parts, which historically they've gotten wrong. They've got it right with their quarterback, clearly. And they got it right with their coach, clearly. They had a rookie quarterback go pass for pass, yard for yard with Joe Burrow and outplay him. That's a Hall of Famer. The Texans are, what do we want to say, easily 3 to 4 wins ahead of schedule. Fair to say? Overreaction. The Dallas Cowboys beatdown of the Giants proves that Dak Prescott has never been better. Reality. It was 49-17, Cowboys win, and not even that close. Dallas's offense was really spectacular. The reality is the Giants suck that badly. Sorry, they're that bad. It's hard to take away any positives because the Giants just suck. They're horrible. They're a joke. I believe they've quit. The Cowboys had a ridiculous 32 first downs and almost 675 yards in offense. Dak Prescott threw for 400. He could have thrown for 900. It wouldn't have mattered. The Dallas offense is playing at a top 3 level. I'm not going to disagree. But anyone who plays the Giants is at a top 3 level. CeeDee Lamb is now one of the best 3 receivers in football. Not because of the Giants game, but before the Giants game. But this whole thing is really about the Giants being a dumpster fire. More about the Giants being a dumpster fire than the Cowboys being that good. And Dallas is good. They are. But you can't count this. I mean, that's how bad the Giants are. They're a dumpster fire. Face painters. The Giants have quit. And they should. They really should. Tommy DeVito or Danny or whoever that guy is playing quarterback, he's the Giants quarterback, and he is there, sadly, so they can tank. He had his best game. He had his best game of his career. He threw for 86 yards. The Giants averaged 1.9 yards per pass, which is better than they had a couple of weeks ago when they averaged -1 per pass. This is a historic dumpster fire, and I think they've quit, and I think they should. I think they should forfeit. I don't think anyone should play the Giants again. The Giants went against Dallas. They went 0 for 12 on third downs. All they do is punt. They suck beyond belief. I think I'm not kidding. They should forfeit the rest of the way. There's no sense them playing games anymore. If you want to give them all the rest of the losses, give them the rest of the losses. If you want to give the Patriots the rest of the losses, just give it to them. Dallas is a really, really hot offense right now. There's no denying Dak Prescott's at a high level. There's no denying that their offense is at a high level. You knew about the defense already, but there's no other takeaway from this game except the Giants suck. Disagree with me all you want. I don't think they should play anymore. I think the season should be over for the New York Giants.